Welcome to the podcast. Here's a sneak peek of what's coming up in today's episode. Dougie, did you used to be crap at sales?
Yes. I used to tell people I was the best salesman in Scotland when I was 18 and then realised probably as I got to like 2021 that wasn't the case. I think I probably thought I was like an 8.5, maybe a 9. I was working in call centres, and in the very first day, I got buddied up with a guy, and he basically turned to me, and I'll be really honest, he's like, I can't be bothered doing calls tonight. He's like, do you just want to take a couple of calls for me? And I made 3 sales that night, and I thought, that's it, I've cracked it. The resilience that you need to show in recruitment is beyond anything that I've ever experienced. Like, you have a bad month in sales, it's tough, it hurts. But in recruitment, you can put your life and soul into projects for 6, 7, 8 months and none of them pay off.
Let's go in early with some horror stories.
One of the guys in the sales team, I can't believe this, I'm really sorry, I know I'd committed it, but he didn't send it to me, he sent it to the client. And it wasn't, and my phone rang. I've been sent an email by somebody in your team and I think you're going to want to read it. I probably could have supported him more to get that deal to the right spot. And I think he reacted like that because of the pressure. So I probably take a good portion of the blame on that one. In
the last 5 years, I've probably had less than 20 people cold call me. 18 of those are probably recruiters. What's it like being a recruiter?
I really do think...
Really, you've got a big background in customer success, client services, CS, and you did that role at Odro.
I oversaw both sales and customer success. We realised after a while that customers could leave. Oh God, people can leave.
Sales being a dirty word in customer success.
I don't think it is.
Lots of customer success managers or CROs that have them feed into them worry about turning CSM into salespeople.
I think that's a culture problem though.
When I see a salesperson go from sales to CS, it's normally, in my experience, because they failed in sales. Let's imagine you're creating the perfect person that can do a CS role and a sales role. What are the traits that they have because they need it in both?
I think
So let's go back to that rise, as I say, all the way up to CRO. And what were some of the biggest blockers that stopped you getting to where you got to, and how did you remove them?
But the reality of the perception is it's really hard to be a 24, 25-year-old revenue leader and go out and position yourself. So for me, I had to build credibility. It actually worked.
You all have SDRs that want to be promoted to AEs, but they're too young. Is that a real thing? Hello and welcome to the I Used to Be Crap at Sales podcast. I'm your host, Mark Akers, the co-founder and head of sales here at My Sales Coach. We call the podcast that because it's true and all of our guests say the same. And today I'm joined by a man who started in recruitment, climbed the ladder at Odro from client engagement to client services to CRO, and now is the CRO at SourceWhale, someone who has the best part of 17,000 followers on LinkedIn, often writing and sharing content that I enjoy. If you've not guessed it by now, today's guest is Dougie Loan. Dougie, welcome to the Orange Chairs. Thank you so much for coming to see us in Newcastle. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here. Thanks very much for having me. And I'm glad I now know how to pronounce your surname, because I've often wondered if it's Akers or Akers, and now I know.
In truth, I'm not totally sure.
Change it up dependent on the audience.
Well, do you know what? No one's ever asked me this on the Orange Chairs. So I'm pretty sure it's Akers, but my family have decided it's Akers. And you can't argue with them.
You can't.
But any word that is ACK is pronounced AK.
Yeah.
But I just think somewhere along the line, someone decided that didn't sound good enough and said no, it's Akers. It's just not.
Yeah.
So I see Akers as just more of a nickname, really. But
nice.
There we are. Well,
let's
kick off the podcast in the same way we always do. Just a yes/no question. Dougie, did you used to be crap at sales?
Yes.
When you answer that question, I always find someone gets a flashback to a certain point in their career. What point in the career flashes back to the front of your mind?
I think it was probably a little bit late. It wasn't... I've got some stories of where I was maybe unexpectedly successful at the very start of my sales career, and then I thought I was the absolute... I think I used to tell people I was the best salesman in Scotland when I was 18, and then realised probably as I got to 2021 that wasn't the case. Just some basic things. I'll never forget, there was one time we were towards the end of a month, and Ryan, the CEO at the time at Odro, was saying, we need to get this deal over the line. You've committed, you've forecasted it for a long time, etc., etc. And I said, there's just no way. There's just no way. There's too much internal process they need to go through. It's just not going to happen. And the company, the organisation were on a pilot with us. And he said, okay, what to do is email the person and say, if we're unable to get this through, we've already left this pilot running for 7 extra weeks. If we're unable to get this through, we'll need to turn things off, at the end of the month. Because essentially we're getting free service. I thought, that's never going to work. That's never going to work. And I sent it, and literally got the PO number within like 3 or 4 minutes. And I realised at that point that I was probably a bit more crap at sales than I thought. So yeah, there's a lot more like that, but that was the point where I realised that I don't actually know it all yet, and there's probably a lot more to still learn.
I think everyone's had that moment where someone that has just walked the shoes that you're about to walk in gives you that penny drop moment, that light bulb moment, whatever analogy you want to go with, and you're like, I never would have thought to do that. And it's worked, and it's very humbling.
Totally. It was just like not asking the tough question, right? Like I just got so comfortable in the relationship that I had with this person. We'd been working together on this kind of sale together for like 4, 5, 6 months. So, it was like mañana, it's coming down the line. And I took that as they were having internal pressure, but actually they were realising that they could just get free service if they just kept telling me it was coming in a couple of weeks. So yeah, that was an interesting one.
So when you self-proclaimed, and I appreciate it's in a jokey way, I'm the best salesman in Scotland.
Yeah.
How good on a scale of 1 to 10 did you actually think you was?
Genuinely, I think I probably thought I was like an 8.5, maybe a 9.
Right.
So when I left school, I was working in call centres and doing a lot of outbound sales. So in the very first day of training, we were selling an insurance product for American Express called My Essentials. So it covered your watch and your phone and that kind of thing. And in the very first day, I basically got buddied up with a guy after 2 hours of classroom training, and he sat with me and I was listening to calls. You used to have like the headphone splitters and things. I don't know if you ever worked in a call centre, but that's what you do it. And he basically turned to me, and because his shift was 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. So he came back from lunch, which was actually dinner, and he said, I'll be really honest. He's like, I can't be bothered doing calls tonight. He's like, do you just want to take a couple of calls for me? And I was like, yeah, that's totally fine. And I made 3 sales that night. And I thought, that's it, I've cracked it. I'm 16 and I've cracked this game. So yeah, I think my confidence was high there. And then I was quite successful after that for a kind of 18 months at that very specific thing. And then, after a while I realised that there's a lot more to life than doing B2C sales for insurance products.
And beginner's luck's obviously quite common in sales because you don't know what you're doing, so you ask lots of questions and you don't give away information.
You've got no preconceived preconceived ideas. So when people would pick up the phone or you'd see the information come through, they go, that's not the right type of customer. That's not going to work. That everything else. But I was like, I had nothing to lose. So it was everything was a bonus. Just having the conversation was good fun. So yeah.
So we were at a point where we thought we were an 8.5 out of 10. You had that humbling moment from your CEO, Ryan. Yeah. What would you have scored yourself at that point out of 10?
I probably think I brought myself down to a 4 at that stage, because I think it was at that point that I realised that I wasn't following any sort of like formal process. This is maybe like 2016, 2017, realised that, I was enthusiastic and full of energy and, could excitedly talk about the platform, but I wasn't necessarily identifying any problems in organisations. I certainly wasn't following any sort of like sales process. I had a demo flow. But I was going through, I was really relying on the prospect and the customer understanding what the product did, what problems they had, how our product solved those problems, and they were creating their own urgency. Essentially, my urgency was, I've got a target to hit. Can you help me out? Was basically my approach. So, yeah, that's when I realised that I had to probably take a revisit on it.
And let's go in early with some horror stories. Everyone's got like a story in their sales career where they just think, I cannot believe that happened. Mm-hmm. Give us one of your biggest blunders or horror stories. Yeah,
I think probably the moment that gives me like the sickest feeling in my stomach is actually when I was a first-time manager at Odro, and one of the guys in the sales team, I'd been putting probably undue pressure on to get a certain deal over the line. I maybe hadn't learned from my earlier mistakes, or was maybe trying to emulate what I'd learned in the past, but doing so in the wrong way. And the person moved the commit on him and said, "Hey, listen, we can't do it this month. I'm really sorry." And he sent a big scathing email, obviously very stressed out and everything else, to me, telling me, can't believe this. I'm really sorry. I know I'd committed it. Blah blah blah. Here's why it can't go ahead. As you can see, I'm gutted. Blah blah blah. But he didn't send it to me. He sent it to the client or the prospect, and he didn't know, so he didn't even recognise it. And it wasn't, and my phone rang, and I picked it up, and it was that person who, by the way, if they're listening to this because he'd work in recruitment, handled it extremely well, like was fantastic, but started off by saying, "I've been sent an email by somebody in your team, and I think you're going to want to read it." And then they sent the email to me and then called me back, and I think like it was that moment of like really sitting in the pain that made me feel sick. So yeah, he was great about it, and like And really the challenge was actually that he was having difficulty internally getting other people on side, and we once understood that, we helped him, and he became a customer. He was actually a customer for a number of years. And yeah, but that moment was probably one of the sickest that I've felt.
And that wasn't even your mistake, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it actually was my mistake, because poor leadership had meant that I hadn't called the signs with him earlier, had meant that I hadn't really coached them maybe through some of the points that I should have coached them through. So he'd ended up in that situation where everyone has to participate in their own rescue, but at the same time, I probably could have supported him more to get that deal to the right spot. And I think he reacted like that because of the pressure that he was feeling. So I probably take a good portion of the blame on that one.
So I think that's a sign of a fantastic leader in the sense of, when I said that wasn't your fault, I'm referring to, it was just a slip of the finger, the wrong email.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But you're doing what great leaders do. You're taking accountability for the whole thing. Yeah. Right. And that's a sign of a great leader. But I can imagine getting that phone call and seeing that email would make you feel uncomfortable.
Totally.
Obviously, you mentioned recruitment there. That's where you started.
Yes.
Well, that's where it says on LinkedIn.
Yes.
So I noticed 3 months with Hayes. That's not a long time. What happened there?
It's not a long time. I was crap at recruitment as well.
Right.
So yeah, what's happened? I'd been working in a call centre, and one of my close friends at the time had gone on holiday and had met two guys on holiday who told him that they were working in recruitment and they were making all this great money. He should go and do it. So he went and did that in Newcastle, actually. And then he phoned me after 3 months and said, "Mate, this is great. It's just basically like working in a call centre, except you get paid lots more money." And I was like, "Oh wow, that sounds fantastic." So I'll go and do that. So Hayes at the time were the only recruitment business that didn't require you to have a degree or previous recruitment experience. So that was a challenge. I couldn't get a recruitment job anywhere else in Glasgow because I hadn't been to uni. And went through the process. That was arduous. That was a 5-step process. The final interview was the person telling me that I didn't really want this job and really trying hard to put me off it, because I think it is a hard gig. But yeah, I went in, day one, found out I was working in construction and property recruitment, temporary for the northwest of Glasgow. 18 years old, had never, I think, even put a shelf up. And, was calling up people trying to convince them to take contract roles for site management and construction sites in Glasgow, which is probably, not the most welcome of environment. So yeah, listen, I just didn't gel with it at all. I didn't do well. And to be fair, my manager at the time was very honest, said, "Look, listen, you need to give this 9 months. Like, you need to give this 9 months." I was going into the office at 7, leaving at 6. And I just was like, I'm just not cut out for this. But what I did then do was go and take a recruitment job, recruiting and calling contact centres, which is what I'd done before, and I was much more successful at that. So yeah.
I was going to say, because you then did over 2 years with other recruitment firms. Yeah. I've always been a sucker for former recruiters in SaaS sales. I've worked with a number of people in SaaS sales that used to be recruiters and hired a number of people. I felt like former recruiters have just a different level of tenacity, working the pressure, managing stakeholders and different types. Like you're managing people, and you're managing customers. And,
completely.
And the people you can't control. It's not a product. It's a person. It's a human, and they can let you down at the last minute.
100%.
And they always pick up the phone, right?
Yeah.
In the last 5 years, I've probably had less than 20 people cold call me, and 18 of those are probably recruiters.
Yeah.
So what's it like being a recruiter, and why do they do so well when they leave it in SaaS sales for the reasons I've named?
I really do think it comes down to a lot of the training in recruitment is very sales focused. So it's on, and you need to bear in mind as well, like recruitment as a sector. And again, I've only worked in recruitment and I've been around the sector for 10 years, right? So I can't speak to it before that, but it doesn't typically have access to the same tools and technologies that SaaS companies have. So really, when you're a recruiter and you're having to start a desk from scratch, you're essentially starting your own business. Like, you get brought in and said, here's your segment, here's your market, we're going to train you how to pick up the phone so that you can make cold calls, and here's a rough idea of what your messaging, positioning and objection handling should be. But really from there, it's totally on you. You need to go out there, you need to win the business, you need to negotiate the rates, you need to bring that job on, you need to qualify that job, you need to go and speak to candidates, etc., etc., etc. So I think good recruiters are typically great qualifiers. They're typically great at doing a high volume of activity because they understand that they need to, but they're also very focused on making sure that they can improve the quality of it as well. I think resilience is a key part. Did you ever do recruitment?
No. I had a couple of offers when I went to recruitment agencies. They're like, oh, why don't you come and work here? And I was always, no, if I'm honest, I think I was a bit too scared by it. I felt like it would be ridiculous hours, lots of pressure. And at the time, I didn't want to be in sales. I was looking for marketing roles. So no, I've never done it, but I've definitely had the opportunity to and not taken it.
I think it's wrong to say that it's a great starting point because actually there's a lot of people that go on to become really successful in recruitment and grow really successful organisations. I think for me at that age, and it's probably a reason why they look for people that have gone through uni, right, where there's a level maybe more of emotional maturity, is like that the resilience that you need to show in recruitment is beyond anything that I've ever experienced. Like you have a bad month in sales, it's tough, it hurts. But in recruitment, you can put your life and soul into projects for 6, 7, 8 months and like none of them pay off. Or they pay off, the person starts, and then for something out with your control, 3, 4, 5 months later, whatever it might be, that person leaves and you don't get paid for that work. So you really could do 12 to 18 months worth of work and get paid for nothing, and there's never a certainty. There's a joke called recruiter anxiety, which is if your phone starts ringing at a time that you don't expect to receive a phone call and it's from somebody you've recently either placed into a job or they're just about to start a job for you, it's very rare that it's them phoning up to say I'm so excited or thank you very much for all your help. It's typically bad news, and that's the tough part.
I can imagine. You must have a really funny story from your recruitment days. Hello, I'm Mark, the host of the I Used to Be Crap at Sales podcast. Thank you for listening. We called the podcast that because it's true, and all of our guests say the same. As a sales leader, you would have been crap at sales once, no doubt, but that changed, and now you're responsible for a team. It's your job to help that team get to where you need to get them to, but also it's your job to develop and grow them as sales professionals. Here's the problem. You don't have the time. You are too busy with other competing priorities, and I get it, but that doesn't mean your sales team should miss out. It doesn't mean they shouldn't fulfill their potential and grow. That's where we come in. If you'd be curious to hear about how we're working with organizations, providing their team with expert coaching on a one-to-one basis, get in touch. Be happy to have a conversation.
Yeah, I can't think of one in particular. I've got my first ever job in recruitment that I won outside of Hayes when I went to HR consultancy was I got completely mugged off, and basically I went down and I met this guy who told me that he was building like the next best SaaS business in Glasgow, but the office was in like a shared office block, and then there was an office room, and then within that office room there was like a section like blocked off, and that was his office, and that's where I met him. And then he convinced me to work at really absurdly low rates, and I went back to the office and was so buzzing and told my manager, and he signed them off. And then I found a candidate and placed that candidate, and then he phoned me and said, look, we can't actually pay you for just one. That's not how we do things. But if you find me a second, I'll pay you for 2. And I was like, sounds good. Like, I'll get 2 placements for the price of 1. Like, this is great. So I told my manager, and he was like, yeah, crack on. Like, full of ball of energy, go and do it. So then I placed that candidate, and yeah, he never answered the phone ever again. So yeah, never paid the invoices, never contacted me. So yeah, at least I made placements, but I didn't get paid for them, which is kind of the aim of recruitment, and you got to get paid for the work you do.
Yeah, that's funny. So where I feel like we're going to take this episode is slightly different to other episodes we've done, in the sense of really you've got a big background in customer success, client services, CS, and you did that role at Odro. I think the first question is, if you're in sales recruitment, what made you go into customer success?
It's really interesting. So when I started at Odro, I was one of the company's first employees. So I was doing everything. So my role as client engagement manager was sales. But you know, this thing of stealth titles, it's really hard to headhunt somebody when you can't find them. So that was the kind of play I think that Ryan was making at that point. So client engagement, I was doing the role of an SDR. So I was outbound prospecting, I was AE. Then I was doing onboarding and implementation. So I was onboarding and training the users. And then I was doing ongoing customer success. And then I was renewing them. And then even doing like invoicing and finance queries and all of that kind of stuff. So it was great because I got full experience to like the entire cycle. And then we actually kept that model for quite a long time. Like even when we started to make our first few hires, we brought technical support in and kind of passed that over. But even when we got to like 5 or 6 people, we still had like people doing that full cycle of lead generation, closing, onboarding and renewing, which was interesting. A really, really interesting mix.
And then from there, it was more of a CS role afterwards, though, right? That's where you were client services director. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in client services, I oversaw both sales and customer success, but it was taking customer. Basically, what happened was we realised after a while that customers could leave. You know, that first way when you like start a company, and for like the first year, it's great because it's all 12-month contracts, 24-month contracts, 36-month contracts, and then after a while, you go, oh God, like people can leave. Like, you know, their churn's a thing, and like, what do we do about that? And you go, oh, we should probably start thinking about processes and onboarding and everything else. So yeah, that was an interesting experience because it had been like, you know, up and up and up, and then it didn't go down, but then it gets harder when you're trying to increase the total ARR if some of that can walk away. So really had to start looking at that. And we hired a woman called Sophie who came in, and she was great. She'd initially come in our sales team, and we moved her over into customer success, and she became our first kind of CSM. And that's how we started to build it out from there.
I've always been of the mantra, like, customer success is more of a company mantra. You've got people in those roles, but it's a company mantra. Talk to me about your view of like modern customer success and the skills needed to be in that department.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I probably didn't think of that when I was in the moment in Odro. Like, I thought that, you know, everything was within our control, essentially, and it was within the control of the customer success department as a whole. So, you know, the amount of contact we had with people, the quality of that contact and things was actually, I believed was a big driver. That I came to realise over the years, whilst I was both there and post Odro, that actually product plays a huge part in it. And things like pricing and other elements as well. But I think if you want to be a really good customer success manager nowadays, I do think it is a sales role. I think that's the reality of it, is you need to be able to influence and persuade people. I do think that the business overall, though, has a key part to play in terms of making sure that it provides you with a great product. So in that sense, as a CSM, not only do you have to be great at sales, you do have to be great at product management and understanding customer requirements and going beyond the, hey, Mark, we need this to do this thing by press, or we need this button. It's like, well, why do you need that button? Talk to me about the problem you're trying to solve. And it's like understanding that and taking that to the product team and pulling it through. And I think just genuinely having some sort of care or even just interest in the market that you're serving really helps. Like, we service the recruitment industry, and there's a lot of software companies that service other industries. And I think that some of the best customer success managers within RecTech that I've ever worked with have been ex-recruiters, because they get it, they understand what the job's like, and they don't have any sort of just like a blanket belief on what it can be. So yeah, that's my take on it. I don't know how you guys see it here.
No, I agree. I think, here's the thing, lots of people don't see it like that. And I feel like you're going to say no, but you'd understand that most people do. Sales being a dirty word in customer success.
I don't think it is.
I know you don't.
Yeah.
But most people do. Here's the thing. So I speak to a lot of CROs, and when they talk about their CSM team, they tell me, I need that team to be able to sell.
Yeah.
I need, like, not only do we measure like NRR, but it's upsell, it's cross-sell, it's early renewals, it's pulling deals forward to get it in for the quarter. Yet they feel uncomfortable going to their CSM team using sales as a word. That's the challenge I find. And then when they talk about, well, we need to coach them, is this going to be really sales coaching? Because our CSMs don't like to see themselves as sellers. They've got relationships. They don't want to ask those tough questions. They don't want to talk about money. They don't want to say no. They really pride themselves in their relationships with customers. And that's where you challenge me. Yeah. But I think you have the best relationship with a customer if something better comes along that fits your need better, regardless. And therefore, I feel like there's a disconnect there. But I know you see it differently. That's why I'm really excited to have this episode. But lots of customer success managers or CROs that have them feed into them worry about turning CSM into salespeople.
I think that's a culture problem, though. So, like, if I look at the customer success team that we had at Odro in particular, I would say that was the most sales orientated group of individuals, skill sets, process, playbook and culture that I've worked in. Don't get me wrong, I think our customer success function that we have at SourceWhale is fantastic, but SourceWhale is a much more technical product, and as a result of that, more of the time is spent on the technical nuance. But if you take it back as to why sales is important, most of the time for the types of deal sizes that we're doing as a company, and I would say unless you're selling into the true enterprise, you're not typically, if the product is to be used by a user, that user themselves doesn't always typically form part of the sales process. So you have a decision maker like a sales leader or a CRO or an IT leader, whatever it might be, who goes through this assessment process, Yes, the sales rep could encourage 1 or 2 users to be part of that, to validate champions, business case, everything else. But the reality is that product's purchased and is then rolled out to Hayes, 2,500 people. Those 2,500 people need to be sold on why this is a good idea for them and why they should change the way that they work every single day to incorporate and encompass that new technology into it. And that, for me, is the role of customer success. Because I can't make you successful if you don't start using the product. And I can't help you to start using the product unless I understand what problems you have and how I can solve those problems by your use of the tool. So in that way, I think it is absolutely sales.
I don't disagree. Obviously, people transition between these two roles,
yes,
more so than I would say many other departments. You get CS going to sales, sales going to CS. What do you think is a better fit? Someone from CS going to sales or someone from sales going to CS?
I feel like you're polarising me here and I'm going to end up upsetting some people, but I think sales going to CS is probably my experience. Only transparently though, because I've never taken someone from CS and put them into sales. So I don't have any data points to base it on or any experience. I would say though that someone going from customer success to sales would probably potentially be a stronger qualifier because they understand what works and what doesn't post-sale. They would probably involve more users during the sales process, and I think in doing so could probably close more deals at a higher deal value. So yeah, that's probably my take on it from there. Have you seen it go the other way? Have you ever seen someone go from CS to sales?
Yes, not often. Cool. What I typically find is those that are in CS, I've always felt you probably should have been in sales, but they've taken the CS job. And look, you're related to this. This was my experience as well. Most people don't want to get a job in sales. Yeah, they fall into it. I remember I got offered sales jobs, but I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do marketing. That's my degree. That's what I'm experienced in. But that was just the right place for me. I just needed time to realise that. And I think when I see some people in CS, I'm just like, you would be great in sales, but they don't want the stigma. They don't like the targets, the pressure. Even though they have those in CS, it doesn't feel the same. But yeah, I've seen a couple of people go from CS to sales.
That's cool.
Here's the thing that I see more than anything else, and I want you to tell me that this isn't the norm. When I see a salesperson go from sales to CS, it's normally, in my experience, because they failed in sales.
I think the term failed in sales, though, is subjective, right? So I think that's they
failed either because they've not hit the targets and the business is a way to keep them, or they've not had the success they want.
I think from my experience, it's been twofold. It's either been the revenue results haven't been there, but there's been other elements. So if I look at someone in particular in our team right now, she was absolutely fantastic, passionate about the craft. Was so read up on the industry, was so could clearly articulate and so much of how the technical nuance of the product would have a benefit. Wasn't necessarily the greatest closer.
So let's imagine you're creating the perfect person that can do a CS role and a sales role. Yep. What are the traits that they have because they needed in both?
I think the first thing is always for me is that they do what they say they will when they say they're going to do it. I think like that's, I mean, I don't know how you pull that together and make that a skill or a trait, but that is for me like the number one amplifier of success. Accountability, yeah, absolutely. And you don't have to chase them. They're like, I'm doing it, I'm on it. And that's both internal and external. I think it makes such a huge difference. I think someone who is curious, and like I know it's banded around a lot in sales now, right? Oh, like curiosity and everything else. But the reality is for me is like they're willing to ask the questions, but ask the hard questions as well. Like when someone gives them an answer, don't stop there. Like know when it's right to ask the next question because the next answer could be really valuable, and know when to stop when you're just asking questions because you're ticking the scorecard or the playbook. And I think that's a level of kind of intelligence that you acquire over time. Commercial acumen, understand how businesses operate, understand how the industry that you serve operates, and then infectious enthusiasm, I think is another key one. Like be really passionate about what you're doing. You don't have to like, eat, breathe and sleep recruitment technology or anything like that. But, when you're on with clients that you genuinely, or potential clients, you genuinely care about the change or the success that they could have when they use the technology.
Anything else?
I don't know, man. I didn't really prep for this. So I to be honest, I think if I prepped for it, I'd probably give you a list of 10 or 15. But it sounds like you think I maybe missed.
No. Listen, this is your interview, your answers.
What would you add to it though? Come on.
I think you've covered the main ones. I think the word that you didn't say, that is again a dirty word now, but I think so, particularly in startups, which you've worked, hustle.
Yeah,
and you have said that. You have said that, but not that word. But I think that's something I'm looking for. That hustle. I think as well, like it's being a creative problem solver, consultative. And again, like it's very similar, to be fair. I was just sort of pushing you a little harder, to be honest.
No, it's good.
So let's talk about your time at Odro. This was obviously a very important place for you, your career, your development.
Absolutely.
You started there when it was brand new, stealth mode type thing.
Yeah, your business has been going for 9 months.
How did that role come about? How did you start working at Odro?
So when I was working in recruitment, Ryan, who was the CEO of Odro, was previously running a recruitment business, and he'd approached me about coming to join his recruitment company. And we'd met, and he'd made me an offer. My daughter was just about to be born, and I spoke it through with my wife, and basically it was like it's just too much of a risk right now to come and join another recruitment business, restrictive covenants, you can't do anything, blah, blah, blah. But I really liked him, so let's keep in touch. He started doing the Odro thing with Bill and Mark, and I'd seen that he was, it looked like he was getting a little bit of traction, started doing some stuff on LinkedIn. So I sent him a message and say, hey, listen, I'd love to come and talk to you about, the work that you're doing and like growing the team and everything else, catch up. And he came back to me and he's like, no, we're not using any agencies. I was like, no, I want to work for you. I don't want to recruit for you. So yeah, went and met him, and the Odro office has a brewery underneath it, and went and met him in there, and for a coffee, actually, not for a pint. And yeah, we spent a couple hours together, and that's kind of how it came about from there.
And Ryan at the time then, so I'm just trying to place this, how old would you have been? About 21, 22?
21, yeah.
So how much older was Ryan than you?
Yeah, 5 years older, so he'd be 26.
5 years older, okay. And obviously he was there your whole time you were at Odro. Yeah. You've gone on an incredible journey there. So as I say, in 5.5 years, you went from client engagement manager, which we now understand that job title a little bit more.
Yeah.
All the way to CRO, and a few roles in between, business manager, client service director, but essentially from client engagement manager to the CRO, that is such a rise at such a pace. It's going to be really hard for you to articulate this, but how did you do it?
I think it was a combination of two things. So one was being willing to just get involved in absolutely everything at every single time. Like there was never a point where something needed done and I thought that's not my job to do it, or I don't want to spend time doing it, or that would mean I'd have to do that on a Saturday morning. And again, I know that's not popular to say that anymore. Like people don't like to talk about hard work or working outside the 9 to 5 or anything else, but you asked me the question, so I'm going to tell you the honest answer. And then the second one, I think, was Ryan was always great at giving me the opportunity. Like, he was always honest. He said, look, listen, there's no favoritism here, and like, there's no, like, but at the end of the day, I can create the opportunities, but it's totally on you, your work ethic, your ability to learn and be coached and get better as to whether or not you'll be able to take those opportunities. I remember asking him about the CRO title in 2018 because I'd just learned about it. I was like, oh, do you think we'll ever have a CRO one day? And he's like, yeah, there's no reason why we wouldn't. He's like, but whether or not it's you will be determined by how successful you are. And yeah, so I think there's obviously a ton more. I think there's a whole podcast episode I could give you on all of the nuance to that, but that was a combination as being somewhere where the opportunity was available and being willing to put in the work and more work than anyone else to get it.
So I thought it was interesting when you said, like, it's not popular to talk about working hard now. It's not.
Yeah.
But it's so important. And I'll die on that hill. Here's the thing. Would you have worked that hard anywhere, or was it because of the leadership of Ryan?
I think it was because of the leadership. Because I knew the opportunity was true, I really bought into what we were doing. Like, bearing in mind, we were selling video tech to recruiters in 2016. Like, Skype was the go-to video tool at that point, or like WebEx. And like, even then, no one used it, right? So this was like a whole new concept, a whole new way of doing business. And like, transparently for me, like, again, there was just this like level of autonomy where it was like, a phone, a desk, and let's crack on and let's go. And we were making it up as we went along, essentially. We could create new messaging, and I didn't go to uni, but that was like a university degree in business, because I was getting exposed to every single aspect of the company. Like, for the first 12 months that I was at Odro, I got paid wrong 10 times, mostly overpaid, and I had to flag every time, listen, I've been paid too much and like this and everything else. So like, just daft little things like that would just like really help. Like, you just learn, and then I'd learn about the payroll systems and how they operated and that type of thing. So yeah, like, I think because of that, it encouraged me to work more. And then I thought maybe this could be successful. Maybe we could sell this company one day, and maybe I would make a lot of money from that. And I was living in a 2-bed flat at the time with my wife and my daughter, and I thought, yeah, this could be the key to something really successful. So I think over time, my wife became more accepting of me working long hours. I mean, she's always been great with that. But like, Saturday mornings, I would sometimes get up early and work. I would always get up. I started to get up early in the morning. Again, such a cliche, but the whole 5 a.m. thing. Get up and do work then. And I travelled a lot, and I still travel a lot now. And that's like an unknown superpower, because when you're sitting in an airport or you're on an airplane, or you're on a train, I'm probably end up in some LinkedIn Reddit thing, but yeah, you can watch Netflix and stuff like that, but I just used it to crack on and either do more BD. So I would send video messages, not on a train because that was a nightmare, but I would send, written messages or tee things up, do follow-ups and things. So yeah, that was the combination of it all there.
I think that, so this morning when you WhatsApped me, I think it was 8 minutes past 6. Yeah. I saw that come through. The first thing I thought was, he's cancelled. Because it was just so early, right? And I read it. I was like, oh, right, no, he's fine. And I replied back, I'd been up because I've got a 5-6 month old baby. Yeah. But I'm guessing you're well into your day at that point. Then.
Yeah, I was on the train. Yeah, I was already on the train. So yeah, and that is good as well though, right? Like you have a kid, like, they do tend to get you up during the night and get you up early and stuff like that as well. But yeah, like if I'm traveling to London on a Wednesday, I'll need to get up at 3 a.m. To get a 6 o'clock flight. And again, yeah, that's just, you get used to it. I go to bed early though. Like I'm not like sitting up till 11 o'clock watching. I also do watch TV, by the way, and watch football and stuff like that, but I'm not staying up late and then, getting up early. I'm not burning the candle at both ends. So, but yeah, and it's just so nice as well because when you do have kids and you do become more senior in organisations, people need you more often, especially in smaller companies where customers will contact you still directly as well. So actually in that window in the morning, no one needs you but you. So you're in complete control of your time, what you're doing during that time, and it's uninterrupted most of the time. So I think that's really useful. It's why I love planes. You get an hour and no one can get a hold of you for an hour between Glasgow and London, and that's when you can get some serious deep thought done.
Yeah, I prefer the golf course for that. But
I've never taken up golf. You've got to give me how did you get started in golf?
Do you know what? It took me a long time. The barrier to entry was just too difficult for me when I wanted to start. At the time, if I wanted to play, I needed a second car. Didn't have that. I needed buy my own clubs. Didn't have that. And then you need lessons and it's time. But what really happened is I started getting invited to like golf days, and it was really embarrassing saying, can't play.
Yeah. That's me. I'm that guy.
Right. And then they'd go, oh, well, you can still come and join in the evening. And I thought, can you imagine that? Have a good day, lads. Like, I've just turned
sat in the clubhouse.
Yeah.
Value sandwich.
So I basically, what it did for me is I agreed to go on a golf holiday. And this all coincided. I got a second car because we had a kid. I was like, right, we've got a second car now. I couldn't justify it just for golf. Yeah. But we've got a second car because we've got a kid coming. I'm going to go on a golf holiday. Wow. I need some lessons, don't I?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, but then that said, we've had a second kid. I've not swung a club in about 12 months now. And I can have a podcast. I am still crap at golf is what it'd be called. So what time do you go to bed on average?
I try to get to bed for 9 o'clock.
Okay, and is that lights out?
Lights out half. Like if I see 9:30, I'm like stressing a little bit.
Most organisations equip their sellers with all the technology they need to be successful. Technology that trebles the amount of emails they can send, quadruples the amount of dials they can make. Technology that enables you to see accounts that you should prospect into, phone numbers at your fingertips. Technology to make a sales rep more efficient with their time. Here's the missing piece: actually making your sellers better at selling, better at their profession. That's the missing piece. All this technology is really helpful in speeding a rep up, but none of it actually helps the seller get better at their profession. That's what my sales coach does. We work with the individuals in your team and you as their leader to help them become the best versions of themselves. We have coaches that work with sellers tactically, from outbounding, discovery calls, demos, negotiation, closing, you name it, and mentally, imposter syndrome, anxiety, stress and weight of targets. Our coaches have been there and done it and had success in those roles. Right, okay. And then obviously, like you say, you get up 5 a.m. club. That's your time to yourself. Obviously, some mornings much earlier. Let's talk about Ryan then, because you've mentioned Ryan a lot. It was him that you bought into. It feels like you were working hard for 3 reasons really. First and foremost, yourself and your family.
Yeah.
Secondly, the vision. Like you believed in it. You thought there was opportunity to exit. But further, it feels like Ryan was really important to you.
Yeah, completely.
The right way to say it, unfortunately, like Ryan tragically passed away recently. But let's talk about Ryan and the impact on you. Talk to us about Ryan and how you worked together and the journey that he put you on.
I think like we ended up forming like a really close connection. I think like, to be fair, like we probably didn't pass that like barrier from like business relationship to friendship for probably like the first 18 months. And I think that was really healthy actually, because he was really tough on me a lot of the time. Like this could be better. We need to do this more. I just really bought into like he was great. He was very straight talking. Like, I really appreciate that. Like, I'd much rather you just told me what I did wrong. Like, I asked you before I started if I got anything in my teeth, and you said, yes, you do. And I was like, perfect, thank you. Now I've avoided an awkward moment. And that is, you know, that was like that, but on different occasions. So he was great at that. I think he had that drive and motivation to always be better. You watch Suits? You ever seen Suits, the TV show?
Is that the one with Meghan Markle?
Yes.
I've not seen it. No, I've not seen it.
Great show, right? You got to watch it. You got to watch it. Bex, hopefully you've seen it. It's good. Yeah, she's nodding. Great. So anyway, in it, Harvey Specter, lead character, has this saying where he says, life is this and I like this. And that became like that kind of like general thing between us both where we would talk about, not in terms of like money and watches and fast cars or any of that kind of stuff, but just generally like always wanting to be that little bit better and being obsessive with it. So yeah, he was great in that respect. He was just became really close mates as well. And like even post Audro, when I joined SourceWhale, I would still talk to him 15, 20 times a day over WhatsApp, and just having that sounding board was great. And yeah, created a lot of opportunity for me. He's a really close friend, coached me a lot in a weird way as well. And I think he had this impact on a lot of people. Is like people would talk to him and he would almost give you like this wisdom beyond his years. So you would go to him with something that you would feel would be like, oh, this is really, you know, I've really thought this through. I mean, I've been in this game 10 years now doing what I do, and I still can't see a way out of this. And he'd be like, oh, well, have you thought about doing this? And you're like, wow, this is so obvious. Like, why did I not see that? You could see things in a different way. So yeah, it had a massive impact on me. And actually, I don't think I've ever told anyone this, but when I decided to leave Audro, and obviously that was a really tough decision to make, and I had a very, very large notice period there. I did a leaving party, and I came back, and he'd bought me a picture, that Harvey Specter one, the one that's life is this and I like this, and he'd written in the back of it, and it said, knowledge is knowing what to say and wisdom is knowing when to say it. And I think that was like a key lesson that I think I took from him was it's all right having the answers, but sometimes you've got to know when to open your mouth and when to keep it shut. So yeah.
I imagine that served you well as a leader as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I was probably known for opening my mouth too soon. So that was something I definitely had to learn.
What I loved about that story was the first sort of 18 months kept you at arm's length. There was that completely boss-employee relationship. It sounds like he never told you fluffy answers. It sounds like he pushed and challenged you. Yeah, he got you to buy into the business.
Yep.
He got you to buy into the mission. But then as time went by, it felt like the message always was, you'll only be limited here by lack of talent or lack of hard work.
Yeah.
You dedicated yourself to the business, but it feels like he pushed and drove you. If you would have taken a job somewhere else without a Ryan, where do you think you'd be today?
Oh, I don't know. Like, not doing what I'm doing, I don't think. And I think like that's a weird thing to say, right? Because I back myself, and I believe you've got to believe in yourself as well and your own ability. Like, you know, I was telling people I was the best salesman in Scotland when I was 18. So yeah, I definitely think I've got that belief in it. And I don't get me wrong, I do think I would have still been successful, but I think what success would have looked like would have been different. Maybe I would have been in a larger company. I wouldn't have been maybe as entrepreneurial. I wouldn't have understood the way that businesses operate as maybe as closely as I do. Because there's two things, right? There's obviously, you know, the coaching and support and opportunity that you created on an individual level, but by building the business, that created that opportunity inside the company as well. So there, you know, if you hadn't built that organization, and you know, a lot of people played a part in that, then I don't think I got that opportunity and that springboard to then go on and do what I'm doing. And interestingly, you know, although we kind of started to cross that divide from just, you know, work relationship to more friendship, after around 18 months, like it really, you know, we became at our closest actually post Audro, because at that point, you know, you're only ever really talking to each other after that as mates, right? And it's less about pipeline and this and that and everything else. So all of the time you're spending together, and you're still spending that same amount of time together, is focused on, yeah, just like life in general, which was quite nice.
One of the things I imagine you're going to be doing in the future, maybe as much as 10 years from now, but when your daughter, and then obviously a bit longer when your son goes to get their first job.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to have the same conversation with my two boys about first job, that employer, who is that person, how are they going to help you?
Yeah.
Obviously, you struck gold with Ryan. what advice are you going to give to your children about picking their first employer and that role that person needs to play?
I think I would have like mixed opinions. Like I don't think I struck gold straight away. Like it took me a couple of things, as you correctly called out from my LinkedIn profile. Like I probably didn't get it right myself, and I don't think those experiences were bad experiences because it taught me what I was looking for. I think my best advice would be like, on an individual level, can you see that person investing time in you? Because that's the reality of the situation is, can you see that person investing time in you, and would you want to work beyond 5 o'clock or before 9 o'clock for that person and for that organisation? And I think if the answer to those things is yes, then great, because you've got the willingness to do the hard work because you believe in the mission, and you've got the potential rewards that can come at the other end of it because that person's bought into you and what you're or could create the opportunities for you. I think if it was one of those things but not the other, then I'd probably be like, is this really what you want to be doing? If they had the run of the mill and they could choose any job in the world, right? Like that would be like, if they needed to put money on the table then, or food on the table, then you just got to do what you got to do.
I think that's really sound advice about how to judge the person you're going to be working for. So let's go back to that rise, as I say, all the way up to CRO. And I appreciate, as I say, the path was made for you, the right conditions, but equally the hard work went in. What were some of the biggest blockers that stopped you getting to where you got to, and how did you remove them?
My age. Completely my age. Like the perception of me as an individual, and it's hard. Like, yeah, I've only just turned 30, and so I think I was a CRO for the first time when I was like 26, 27, something like that. I can't remember the exact. It feels like it was my 20s just merged into one recently. But yeah, that was really difficult. And to be honest, Ryan was really honest with me about that as well at times. He's like, look, you're ticking all the boxes, but the reality of the perception is like it's really hard to be a 24, 25-year-old revenue leader and go out and position yourself. So for me, I had to build credibility. I actually worked, Ryan was great. He introduced me to a guy, his executive coach, a guy called Thomas Chalmers. And Thomas has been probably one of the, I don't think I actually praise him enough actually for the impact that he had on me. I met him for the first time, and a bit like telling everyone I was the best salesman in Scotland, I told him, yeah, I mean, if you put me in a room with like 30 other CEOs right now, I could confidently have a conversation. I've got no issues with that. And by the end of that meeting, I left realising that I think if I was in a one-on-one conversation with a CEO, I would probably, outside of the organisation, I would probably struggle. So, yeah, that had a big impact on me as well. But the biggest barrier was really just like credibility, age, and just exposure, like making mistakes. I used to get very frustrated by it. I was like, I'm ready and I know what I'm doing and I'm passionate and I'm energetic. Just give me the shot, give me the shot, give me the shot. And I asked for the shot a lot more than I was given the shot. And but by the time I got the shot each time, I think I was glad that I hadn't been given it when I'd asked for it. And I still think I was even a little bit unprepared when I got it every time. Because you do need to make mistakes, right? Like you do need to go through the ringer and realise that that's the wrong call. So that when that situation comes up, you're not always making that mistake for the first time in that position when people are looking to you. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. I feel like I went off on a tangent there.
No, I think the age and credibility thing is very real. So how do leaders manage that? Right, there'll be leaders listening to this podcast that have got very young SDRs, very young AEs, selling to senior decision makers in businesses. The age they can't hide. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
I used to do discovery calls over the phone. Right now
that's
Zoom.
A good one. There we go. You've cracked it.
But you can't do that anymore, can you?
Yeah, no, right? I know, that's a good point.
All discovery calls are now not, well, obviously it used to be in person, then they went to the phone, and that was when
Why do we do it on video? Why can't we do it? That's genuinely, I've not even thought about that. Why can't we just do discovery calls over the phone again? Is that not more respectful of people's time as well? Like a 20-minute phone call versus a 45-minute video call?
Why are they longer?
I sometimes think they're longer, not necessarily because, I mean, you would like to think it's because we're getting more useful information, but I think it's because people are used to this, like almost ceremony now of, when I'm going to buy software, I must spend 45 minutes on a video call with this software rep. And like, how many people are actually, if they're assessing 3 to 5 different vendors, are looking forward to 3 to 5 45-minute discovery calls?
Yeah, not many. Yeah. But it's interesting. When I started out as, it wasn't called an AE back then, but selling, I did go and do some face-to-face meetings. Not loads, but I did. And then that all stopped. Just tech really stopped and changed, really. But then at the start of COVID, it did. I can't remember when. It went from phone calls to video calls. And I remember one person really like laid into me because an SDR set the call up for me. Yeah. I get on the call and he starts laying into me about, well, this is a phone call. we'll do it on Zoom now. So already you've lost credibility. Already, I don't think your company's very forward thinking.
What, because you didn't do it on Zoom?
Yeah. And I remember thinking,
that's wild, man.
No,
that's
honestly,
wild. What?
He spoke to me. He spoke to me like I was a piece of shit because it was a phone call, not a Zoom call. And I remember this must have been about 2020, maybe 2019. I remember saying back to the team, they all need to be video calls now because this guy is really calling out that we sound really old school and really dated. It went to video, but I suppose to my point, yeah, you can't really hide your age. No. Your age is your age. Yeah. Credibility, maybe you can get that with the right talk tracks, the right confidence, the right delivery, the right tone. But equally, it depends what you sell. Let's talk about an example. If you sold to sales leaders, right, they know the game. Yeah. You're selling, let's say you're selling a tool or service that makes you better at sales, but they're almost going to judge you based on, well, their success, because they're a sales leader, so they were good at sales. Now a salesperson that's selling a tool that makes you better at sales, there's like the double whammy effect there. You need to be really good. How do you help your team with that? Let's start with the age thing. You all have SDRs that want to be promoted to AEs, but they're too young. Is that a real thing? Can you be too young, or is that just almost like that football terminology? If they can play, they're old enough.
Yeah, I definitely don't view it as an age thing in terms of I think the SDR to AE transition is not so much of a drama from like an age perspective. I'm thinking here of going from being like a leader of like a small team to like the chief revenue officer for the entire organization was like, obviously I took many steps between that, but I wanted to make that. I just wanted it to be one quick jump, and it was like, slow down. You need to kind of earn your stripes here a little bit. But yeah, so I don't think age is a
let me challenge that. Yep. Let's imagine you hire a 16-year-old straight from school. Yep. They're an amazing SDR for 2 years. Yep. They're 18. They want to be an AE. Yep. Do you think they can be? No hesitation at all in their age.
Honestly, I think they can be. I think it's 16. If they're an amazing SDR, they're clearly doing something right.
Yes,
they're hitting targets. Right, they're hitting targets, and it's a hard job to do for longer than 12 months for most people.
Yep.
So they've stuck it out for 2 years. They've earned their stripes. They're passionate. One of our best AEs in the US 14, 15 months ago was knocking doors selling solar panels in Florida, and came in and did 10 months as an SDR. Promoted him to a junior AE where he basically would still go out and generate his own leads. He got no inbounds, no leads from any other SDRs. He had to generate his own pipeline and close it, and is now regularly competing at the top of the board in our US business. And our US business is a highly, highly successful business unit in our organisation. And I think a big part of that comes down to his attitude. And he's young. He's early 20s. So he's not and he hadn't actually worked in staffing and recruiting previously either. But what he has done is learned the craft, learned the product, and then spent a lot of time working to understand our customer base and how they successfully use the product. So yeah, I like to think I did well when I was younger as well. So that's my caveat.
But interesting you use the word junior there.
Yeah.
Junior AE.
He's a full AE now.
Full AE now.
Yeah. And on track for a promotion to senior.
Okay. So for you, age isn't really a barrier.
No.
But it was for you.
Was for me in terms of leadership.
Because that's what I mean. Yeah, you went to the next level.
And I made some horrible mistakes as a first-time leader as well.
Like what?
Right. So I remember first time I got a leadership role was actually in a call centre. I only had to look after the team for a week. And the first day they didn't make it, they basically were like, no bother. Here's Dougie. He's looking after the team this week, supply teacher. Made 10% of the calls they were meant to make. And then the next day tried to do the whole Sir Alex Ferguson treatment of basically raising my voice and swearing and that kind of thing, because I was just turned 18 and I thought that's how people manage teams. And basically everyone just looked at me as if I was a complete idiot and basically were like, yeah, no worries, mate, and then just cracked on to do even less calls. So when they got back to the end of the week, they hadn't performed, they didn't do the inputs, they didn't get the outputs, and a couple of them had complained to the sales manager that I'd shouted and sworn at them. So yeah, it didn't go down well. And yeah, I've done other things as well over the years. I remember one time we were really behind target in Audro, and I told everyone that we had to stay late. And I know that sounds daft, but I went about it the wrong way. I said, right, we're all staying in until 8 o'clock tonight and we're all doing this. I didn't talk to people and engage them or talk through hey, we're behind target. Why do you think that might be? What could we do differently? Take them on that journey. I didn't say it was mandatory. I didn't really give them much choice.
Right.
And then I compounded it by ordering in some really crappy pizzas to try and make it fun. So yeah. But I think my biggest thing as a young leader was sometimes being frustrated by people not following the process and people not willing to do the same level of work that I was doing. But it's the whole thing of why sometimes good footballers struggle to make the transition to leader. It's like, David Beckham walks out onto a park and he's like, this is how you do a free kick. Why can't you take this free kick? And it's not understanding how you replicate yourself and other people. So that took me a while to get over.
There's some good analogies there, definitely, with great football players stepping into management and not quite getting that. Talking about credibility then, like age, I get it from a leadership point of view, but in general, you're quite happy sellers at any age if they're good enough. Credibility, first of all, how important do you think credibility is as an AE when selling?
I think it's really important. But I think it depends on how you define credibility.
That was my next question. What is credibility to you?
Credibility to me is the person who is purchasing the product, or the buyer, the potential buyer, feels like you are the most knowledgeable person on that product and those problems that you solve. That they genuinely believe that by working with you, they are not necessarily learning how to do better recruitment, for example, right, or anything else, but they're learning insights and information that they wouldn't necessarily have had they not engaged with you as an individual. And I think you can demonstrate that in a number of ways. The questions that you ask, the way that you take them through the product demonstration. So are you story selling? Are you talking it to them with them and through the eyes of a user and explaining to them how their teams may be experiencing this problem on a day-to-day that maybe they might not even recognise themselves, or how those problems might be showing up in the organisation. And I think one of the key ways to do that is to spend as much time face-to-face with current clients or potential clients as you can. Like, offer to take someone can I take you for a coffee? There's a couple of things I'd like to run through with you. You can use people as a sounding board more often than you think as well.
I struggle sometimes though thinking like the age is important there. Yep. Just in terms of stature, when you talk about being an 18-year-old, trying to tell everyone what to do, part of that would have been just because of your age, they wouldn't have taken you as seriously. Here's my biggest fear. A lot of companies are significantly reducing their headcount for SDRs. Yep. Where do people get the experience from to become AEs if that role does continue to diminish? Where do our AEs come from?
I think you're spot on. I think it's really hard. Like, it's probably one of the biggest challenges. You look at the challenge that a couple of years ago everyone was talking about, where's the next developers coming from? Where's our next devs? I think everyone's got an opinion on that now, and OpenAI and everything else. But I think the same issue is going to happen within commercial roles within sales. I do think though that there is a case for the kind of the 360 role, if you like, where someone comes in. Like, that was how we initially did it at Audro. We would bring people in and they would prospect themselves, generate their own opportunities, run the demo. And I do think it's not the most efficient and effective model in terms of like financially within the organisation. But I do think you have a closer emotional connection to someone that you're presenting to and qualifying if you're the one that's prospected them. But that's my personal opinion and personal experience, not necessarily a business advice.
I would say any data I've ever looked at in my time in sales has always shown that AE's own meetings close at a higher rate than ones that have been put on for them, exclusion being inbounds. So as I say, it's just incredible growth at Audro in 5.5 years. To be, so how old were you when you were made CRO then? You're 30 now, you must have been 27?
27, yeah. 27.
I mean, most people won't get to that level for a decade after that and the rest. But still, the point that I want to make is getting to the next level, right? Lots of people listening to this podcast will be at a level now. They could be an SDR, they could be an AE, they could be a first-time manager, whatever the level they're at, they can't get to the next level, right? There's blockers in place, they're stuck. What advice would you give them as someone that has just smashed down those levels and got to where you want to be?
Yeah, I think you treat it like a sales process. So you go out and you understand, like, it's almost like medic in a way. Like, what are the barriers? What is the decision-making criteria for me to go from where I am now to the next part? What do you need to see from me? Where do you see me, now in comparison to that criteria? Is there a particular time frame that you feel like you need to see that over? Or if I was able to show you that within the next month, would that be enough? If I was able to show you all of that within the next month or within the next 6 months based upon what we've discussed, like, what would stop you from making that promotion? Is there anything else that I've got to consider? And yeah, just being like really honest with yourself and your self-assessment. I think a lot of the time it doesn't work because someone comes to you and says, Dougie, like, I want the next thing. what is the next thing? I don't know. I just want the next thing. Like, I'm bored. I want to be challenged. And I'm like, right, well, we need to talk about what the next thing is for you, because what the next thing looks like for Mark, for Bex, for anyone else, is totally different things, right? So you need to have a real clear understanding in your mind about what the next thing is. I think too many times, and this is not necessarily wrong, you just asked me about my own personal experience, is like, I didn't want to sit there and be told what the next thing was and then make my ambitions fit the next thing. I wanted to go and say, this is what I want. How do I get it? And I'm willing to do everything that I need to do to make that happen. So you tell me, and let's talk it through. And that was the key to it.
Do you know what I really like about your answer is you don't make it a yes/no question. You don't say to your boss, I want this role, can I have it? You say, I want this role. What do I need to do to make that happen?
Yeah.
Can you show me a path to get there? Can we agree the steps that I need to take? And it becomes more of a, well, of course you can get there, right? Like that, take it back to when you said to Ryan, you ever think we'll have a CRO role? I think we'll have one, whether that be you or not, I don't know. This is the path you need to go on. And I think that's what you've done really well in your career by the sounds of things, is you've not made promotions yes/no decisions. You've made promotions and opportunities. One, because you've agreed that that's where you want to get to. What needs to happen to get there? And then you've worked your socks off to make it happen as well. But here's the thing that's really interesting. You knew when it was time to leave. And look, you may in your heart of hearts think, oh, maybe I should have stayed another couple of years. We don't need to know that. But I suppose the question is, well, there's two questions. One, what's the reason you did leave?
Yeah.
You had a great mentor and then friend who coached and developed you. It felt like the business grew below you. You reached the CRO level at 27. Why did you leave?
I think probably the same reason. The same reason why I'd been so successful was also the same reason why I wanted to leave. I think it is just the, like, what's next thing. Like, if you look, I must have been an absolute nightmare for Ryan. Like, because I was constantly saying to him, like, here's where I want to go next. How do I get it? Here's what I want to do next. How do I get it? And like, that probably became a big part of his job, was like, you know, certainly latterly as the company grew and less of his time was focused on other people and was just focused on like managing the board essentially of where I sat on it. And for me, it was about like two things. One thing that really played in my mind was, has this just been luck? Was this just a one-time thing where it's just happened? I've become a CRO at 27. And that's what I wanted. And actually hitting that probably had a negative effect on me, because it was the end goal. And now I've achieved it, so what next? And the question was, well, one, is it a one-time thing, or can I do it again? Or two, do I go and do it for myself? And look, yeah, it was obviously a tough conversation to have, but Ryan was great about it. Like, obviously you become mates as well, right? So it's like, you know, there's like a, whoa, like, slow down there. You know, what are you talking about? You know, where's this come from type thing? But like, I'd be lying if I'd said like that happens. I always have that in my mind. I'm always thinking, what's next? Where am I going to go? So actually, when I decided to leave Audro, I didn't have another job to go to. It wasn't like I was going from there to another job. It was, I was going to go and do one of these two things. I was either going to go and repeat that process again somewhere else, or I was going to go and start up my own company. And the reason I had to have that conversation with Ryan was I respected him too much and everything he'd given to me, that if I was taking option one, that he heard about that from someone else apart from me. Yeah, a bit of a risk, but he was great about it. And I had a couple of offers. I was mentoring Ben at the time, who is now our VP of sales at SourceWhale. Inevitably, it kind of came up in conversation that I was, you know, either going to be doing this or doing this. And he was like, whoa, come and work here. Like, you know, don't be crazy. And I'd known Tim because of that. And then, yeah, the SourceWhale thing for me was repeat the process from where we were at that point to where we are now in revenue, and America to the US market. Hadn't done that yet. We'd done a lot of international work at Audro in terms of Europe and Asia, but we'd never cracked the US, and that felt like another thing to do. And again, I don't know if I'm certainly not the best CRO in the world or anything like that. Like I said, I was the best salesman in Scotland, but I think I've ticked off a lot of those things. And I'm sure I'll ask myself again the question again, which is, do I go and do it for a third time, or do I go and start up my own thing? And yeah, I'm sure that question will come to me at some point.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Go for it.
Do they understand you in America?
No. No, do you know, I genuinely, right, we have an all-hands call on a Friday, and I thought it was a joke at the start, but on Zoom, when someone turns the subtitles on, you get a notification to tell you that someone's turned the subtitles on. And I was like, very funny. And then actually it kept happening. And then it happened even in just like US-centric updates. And I was like, oh, I can't keep calling this out. Like, they're genuinely doing it because they can't understand my accent. So my accent has become much softer over the years. But I think even now, it's the speed at which I speak as well. And I use words that are not recognisable even to English people sometimes. And I think that's the challenge. But
I don't think you've used anything I've not recognised, but I have felt myself leaning over slightly. So when should someone then leave? If they want those promotions, they're not climbing the ladder, even if they're really happy there, when's the time to leave?
I think you need to ask yourself, like, whether you care about progression or not, because you just said, like, they're really happy there. And by the way, it's okay to not want to go any higher. Like, that's totally cool as well. I've worked with people who have been in that position and we've supported them to continue to get better at their current role. And then when they have wanted more, we've been able to accommodate that. But for those that are driven, they enjoy the environment, but there's just not that next step. I think you need to be hopeful enough that if you're asking the right questions, like we discussed earlier, and the person, your leader, has been direct, the leader has been direct enough with you in their responses that they're not stringing you along, right? You need someone to be honest with you. And at that point where they've said to you, like, the reality is, Mark, no matter how hard you work here, no matter what you do, you can't have that role. And you can't have that role because either A, the company, and here's the issues that exist within the company, it means that you can't have that, or B, as an individual, these are challenges that you have that I don't think I can help you overcome. And for me at that point, I'm like, well, I got to go, because either the problem's in the organisation, and I need to go and find an organisation where those problems don't exist, or I need to go and work with a leader or a coach or a mentor that can help me overcome those challenges. And maybe I could stay. The third option is maybe I could stay and work with my sales coach, and I could get a coach or a mentor in that could help me overcome those challenges. But I've got to be sure that my leader would be willing to accept that I could change, is my thinking. So yeah, I went down a rabbit hole there for a very specific scenario, but that's how I would view it in my mind.
We'll start to wrap up, yes. But what piece of advice do you wish someone gave you earlier in your career?
Be patient. Be patient. And what I mean by that is, like, be driven, but don't let frustration cloud your ability to execute things. So there was things that I could have learned a lot faster if I wasn't getting fed up at the fact that I wasn't moving fast enough. Does that make sense? It was almost a weird paradox where I'd be like, oh, this is so annoying that I can't be the sales manager tomorrow because I'm only 19 or 20 or 21. And I probably put a lot of mental energy into that bucket than I did into the mental energy of the things that I could control. So yeah, I'm very much focused on what I can control now, and I have been for the last 10 years. But I think for those first few years, it was always frustration at the things I couldn't control. And I think patience is probably the part that comes down to it.
Who helped you develop that patience?
Ryan.
How?
I think he laid things out for me really simply and said, look, listen, exactly like I said, he said, look, you can't control that. You can't do anything about your age. You can't, you can wait about and do nothing for the next 5 years and then you're old enough and that's golden. Or you could invest that time for the next 5 years in things that will mean that when you get that opportunity, you're 10 times better today than you are then. He always said to me, when you promote someone or when you get promoted, no one in the business should ever be able to turn around and say that wasn't a no-brainer of a decision. He's like, so how do you position yourself to make sure that that's the right outcome?
I've loved this. I love this time together. I feel like if I was to try and summarize it, what I've really taken from your incredible rise, it's not lost on me. I'm sat next to someone who's like 7 years younger than me, and reached incredible levels. I think what I take from it is, first of all, maybe there's a little bit of luck for you in the sense of you found Ryan.
Yeah.
But
completely.
The importance of having someone, how you articulated it, that is going to invest its time in you and your development, someone that was a bit older than you, someone that wanted to take that journey. So I think you've got to make sure that whoever you're working for invests time in you and your development and can help you see the big picture. It's to be at a company where the mantra is, if you work hard enough and you've got the talent, anything's possible. But we need to map out a plan to get you there.
Yeah.
I take from you the benefits of having customer success mindset versus a sales mindset and bringing that together. I take from you knowing when it's time to move on to another organisation. And look, you don't have to do that. Some people can be successful in the role and just stay in that role. I loved our talk around credibility and age, and I still feel like I'm at twos with that in the sense of some of the examples you gave. I'm like, I feel like that'd be difficult at a very young age, but
that's fair.
I buy into your mantra there. I've really enjoyed our time together. There's obviously loads more we could talk about, but thank you for coming all the way down
Thanks for having me.
being a guest on the podcast. I think it's been a really good episode, and I think people are going to take a lot from it. Thanks very much.